In this C++ video, we're going to be learning some C++. So let's get started. Alright, so first off, in C++, we're in Replit right now. So in C++, it's not like Python where it's just top to bottom, you just write your code. You have to do pre-compiling before you start writing. So you have to do int main, and you have to do curly braces to include your code. So I'm going to include all my code in here. And you need to include stuff. So look, in order to use vectors, you need to include vector, and you include algorithm. Let's use certain data structures and loops. Array, let's use arrays, and we can also include string, vector algorithm string. We can include math.h. Math.h lets us do basic arithmetic in C++, and include tuple allows the usage of tuples, and we can also do, I'm going to include map. Map is a good storage thing in C++, so yeah, I suggest you, before you start writing your code, you just copy and paste this into the first line, or just type it all in before you start. And we're also going to be using namespace. And what this does is, so in C++, when you're printing stuff, like we did in Python, we did print hello. In C++, it's std cout. Cout is your output. But since we use namespace std, we don't need this std part. So we just use cout hello. And we always end our code with a semicolon, except for for loop, the first line of a for loop. In the first line of a for loop, we don't use a semicolon, but in the body of the for loop, we do use a semicolon. So that's what we need to do. And cout is your basic output. So if we do cout hello, which I'll run right now, you should get an output of hello. As in Python, when we did print hello, we got an output of hello, and as you can see, we get an output of hello. Now we're going to move on to inputs and outputs. So take an input. So first, I'm going to declare a variable, and I'm going to do int n. We'll go over variables in a second. I'm just declaring something, so we can just get started quickly with this. So I'm going to do cin, and cin is your basic input. So this is what you're going to use for input. So this lets you input an integer n, and then cout lets you output the integer n. So if I run this program, what this program is doing is it's letting me take an input n, any integer, an integer input of n. So if I get one, type in 1, it'll return 1. So when we get the input part is the cin, and and the output that you're giving, you can see the red part right here, that's the cout. That's what we're doing over there. Alright, so we're going to go more in depth about variables. So we have multiple data types in C++. We have int, which is just integers like 1, 2, or 3. So I'm going to do int a is equal to 1. We have doubles C 1.2, which is basically decimal points. We have floating points, which is also decimal points, but floating points are they get pretty harder to work with, so I recommend you use doubles, because in the long run it'll save you time. We can do long h, and long is longer integers, so 10 instead of 1. So if we use an integer, it would be like 1. A long is a longer integer, which is 10. And long is something like 100 or 1000, something even longer. So that's how you would use that. And then char, or your characters, would be something like h, and always have a semicolon at the end. So that's what the char would do. And we also need a letter over here. I'm gonna do char. Actually, no. So if we already used a variable, you can't repeat it. I'm gonna use char u since we didn't use that yet. All right. And I recommend you just do like char C. You just use C, but I'm just mixing it up just so we can. And we also can do string S, which is something like hello, which that's what that is. And yeah, that's basically variable declaration. I mean that's all there is to it. So now we're gonna move on to for loops. So for loops would be something like if someone gave you a variable long. I'm gonna do an integer just get started. Int v. You can do for. So we know for loops in Python. It's a similar thing over here. So for b equals 0, semicolon, v is less than 10. We're gonna do less than 10, v plus plus. And then we curly braces. And then inside the for loop, which is the body of the for loop, we need semicolons at the end. So like I talked about in the beginning of the video, the beginning of a for loop does not need a semicolon, but the body of the for loop does. So inside the for loop, we're going to do cout v plus 8 end l. So end l. So let's say I put over here cout high. Alright, if I do cout high, and we'll hang on to that, but if I just do cout high, we have cout hello in the first in line 16, and in line 17 we have hi. So as you can see, the output is hello hi with no space at all. And this is a real problem because, well, it's not a problem if you want it that way, but if you don't want it that way, an easy fix would just be to, after this, you can do hello and end l. And terminates program. So the end l thing basically moves the next line over to the next line. So in this case, line 16 or line 17 would be moved over from line 16 in the output to the next line. Now moving on to for loops. This is our for loop here. So I'm going to terminate the program just so I can show. So over here, if we run the for loop, we should get a result. And also, if you don't, you should always get in the habit of ending your programs with, okay, so and if I do cout v plus 8, it'll give us the result of for loop. So int v, it starts at 0. So the for loop starts at 0, but we did a plus 8. So the plus 8, 0 plus 8 is 8, and then we did 10. So 8 plus 10 is 18. So less than 18 would be up to 17. So that's basically what the for loop is going to do. Now, conditional statements, if else. So if else would be like if 9 is greater than 10, which we know it's not, but the out, and then the cout would be false. Or actually, we're gonna do if, yeah, we're gonna do a true, and then we're gonna end the semicolon. Okay. So if 10 is greater than 9, or if 9 is less than 10, which it is, it's gonna output 2, and we need the curly braces. And the else, we have more curly braces, and the else statement can be cout false. And we can also do end l. And I'm also going to do end l up here. So this is a basic if-else statement. We've seen this in Python, obviously, when we did if-else statements. And I believe So yeah, so when we did if-else statements in Python, we used if-else. So I'm just going to run the program, and the output of this program is true, which it is. It's not 10 is greater than 9. Alright. So that's part 1 of Introduction to C++. Hopefully this video was helpful, and yeah.